Hi there. So this is spec point 1.7, which is about the risk factors of cardiovascular disease. So the things in your lifestyle that would increase your risk of developing any kind of cardiovascular disease, so disease of the heart and the blood vessels. Now, I say your lifestyle, all except the first one on your lifestyle. So the first one is actually genetics. Now, it's been identified that there are obviously genes that affect um, your risk of high blood pressure um, and atherosclerosis. And the genes that are involved are called the APO genes. And they affect your risk, as I said, of high blood pressure and atherosclerosis. So, obviously, high blood pressure is going to be more likely to damage the endothelium, starting the blood clotting cascade, and atherosclerosis is going to give you that atheroma, the plaque in the artery wall, and then if that then ruptures through the endothelium, it's going to lead to the blood clotting cascade. So, two effects that are going to increase your chance of cardiovascular disease. And the genes that they've identified that control that are the APO genes. There's different versions of those, and it's your luck and your genetics that are going to determine that. The second factor is your diet. Now, don't just say good diet, bad diet, healthy diet, things like that. You need to be more specific. So, those kind of two factors in your diet that are going to make a difference as a risk factor of cardiovascular disease. The first is having too much saturated fat, and the second is having a high salt intake. So, the first one, if you've got too much saturated fat, is going to increase the cholesterol. Now, if you've got increased cholesterol, we know that the atheroma is made of the fatty deposits in the artery wall, and therefore, if we've got increase in cholesterol, we've got an increased risk of getting an atheroma. And we know that if we've got an atheroma, then we've got an increased risk of starting off the blood cascade. Okay. If you've got too much salt in your diet, the risk of that is that it increases blood pressure. Now, if you've got an increased blood pressure, that's going to increase the risk of damaging the endothelium. If we damage the endothelium, there's increased risk of blood clotting, starting off that blood clotting cascade. Okay, so be really specific when you're talking about diet. The next one is your age. Now, because those plaques take time to develop, naturally, the older you are, the more time you've had to develop plaques, and therefore the more chance there is that you have plaques in your blood vessels, in your arteries. So, the older you are, the higher the risk. The next one's gender. Now, females actually have a higher level of estrogen, which we know have more estrogen. And there's a link between the amount of estrogen that we have and the amount of HDLs, okay, which are linked to increased HDLs. Now, HDL stands for high density lipoprotein. Now, I always tell my students that H is for happy, for high, it's a good one. L is for low, it's the bad one. Okay, so the high density lipoproteins are basically carrying cholesterol around. So the ones that are low, that bad, are carrying the cholesterol basically to the artery walls, leading to all these problems. But the high ones are carrying the extra cholesterol out of the way to be broken down. So it's a good thing. So that actually decreases the risk for females. Okay, so decreasing the risk by removing the cholesterol. Okay, the next one is smoking and the risks of smoking. Now, smoking is a really big risk factor because there's a number of substances in it that cause a problem. So the first one is the carbon monoxide. So carbon monoxide. So we all know that carbon dioxide is carbon and two oxygen. Carbon monoxide is a molecule that's carbon and one oxygen. So it's just CO. Now, your hemoglobin in your red blood cells is meant to carry oxygen around, but the hemoglobin in the red blood cells can also carry carbon monoxide. So if you smoke and you've got carbon monoxide, sorry, the carbon monoxide will bind to that hemoglobin, and therefore therefore the hemoglobin can't bind to oxygen, so you can't carry much oxygen around your body. And then obviously, if you've got a lack of oxygen, if the cells don't get enough oxygen, they can't respire and they die. That's what a heart attack is. So carbon monoxide, let's say, it binds to the hemoglobin in red blood cells, reducing the amount of oxygen the red cells carry. Okay. Remember, we always talk kind of initially about heart attacks. Remember, if it's the same things happening in the brain and it's the cells, the neurons in the brain that are dying, then it would lead to a stroke instead. The other substance in from cigarettes that's a problem is nicotine. So the nicotine actually makes the platelets more sticky. We spoke in the previous pet point about how when you get the arthroma in here, then we damage the endothelium and we get the fibrin forming the mesh, and then the red blood cells and the platelets forming the clot on here. So if nicotine is making the platelets more sticky, then they're more likely to stick there and form a clot. Okay, it's even more likely to happen, or likely to happen more quickly. So increases the risk of clotting. The other thing that nicotine does is it decreases the amount of antioxidants that we have. Okay, so it decreases the amount of antioxidant. And what the antioxidants do is they help to prevent the cell damage to the cell walls. Okay, and so we haven't got that protection if we've got the nicotine. So the nicotine, let's read this through, decreases the amount of antioxidants, which should be helping to protect the walls of arteries. Okay, so we haven't got that protection, so that increases the risk as well. All right, that brings us to the end of spec point 1.7, which is, should have written in there, CVD risk factors. And obviously we've got one genetic, and then the rest are to do with our lifestyles. All right.